Hello and welcome to episode 62 of our Conversation to Connect. Let's get real talk powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm Cyndi ONeill-Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections since 2009. Yes, that's 14 years. So at Exceptional Connections, we offer intentional and innovative solutions to boost your business. Each month, we nominate a different member of our community to have a meaningful conversation with. So be sure to make yourself comfortable with a cup of tea or a beverage of your choice. It's warm and toasty here in the Pacific Northwest, so I've got water. But do put your questions in the chat box and we'll engage around the 45-minute mark. I'll open the lines so you can share your ahas, your epiphanies, ask your questions. It's a great opportunity. We've got Wonderful Morrison on the line here, and she's a wealth of information. And so do take advantage of the Q&A opportunity. So in the course of these 62 episodes, we've encouraged and supported our community to stay connected during these challenging and uncertain times. So as we get started here, I invite you to set aside distractions and invest your attention in the conversation that's about to unfold. Look for just one idea that you can put into action so that you don't cheat yourself out of the time that you've invested here. So our conversation this week is with the amazing, Wonderful Morrison, joining us from Bellevue, Washington. Welcome,
Yay!
Wonderful. Yay.
Yay, I'm so happy to be. I love this community so much. And I'm just really always so honored to be a part of it in any way, shape, or form. And right before we started recording, I was just saying, I think I know somebody famous because Kim Pelham, who's also a community member, I caught her little ad in one of the game, the little phone games that you play. And I thought, what an expansive community. So thank you for having me.
She has a phone game. Oh my gosh, I got to check that out.
I don't know if it's a game. I play the game, but in between the games, ads come up and
the ad came up. Oh my gosh. Well, good marketing, Kim. Well, we're excited to be able to have you here, Wonderful. And thank you again for sharing with our Exceptional Connections community in August and for being willing to jump on today and have just a longer conversation about this. We're going to be talking about positioning yourself as the authority, attract, convert, and retain more clients. And before we dive into this conversation, I want to take a moment to introduce Wonderful to maybe some listeners that haven't met her before and are just checking in, listening to our channel today. So Wonderful is a dynamic entrepreneur, marketing strategy expert, mentor, and respected online business educator. Her passion lies in equipping women entrepreneurs with the strategic tools and knowledge needed to foster the long-term sustainability and profitability of their businesses. With an impressive 25 years of professional experience as a successful business owner and entrepreneur, Wonderful's vast knowledge base is adaptable to any business model. Whether you're seeking to pivot your current venture or aiming to scale it to new heights, she possesses the expertise to help you achieve tangible results. Elevate your leadership and business with LeadHer Academy, online CEO development for female entrepreneurs. Embrace your power and conquer the business world. Join our tribe of fierce women on the path to success. So thank you again, Wonderful. And welcome. And do share with our community here before we jump in a little bit more about your journey, because it's so intriguing.
Well, so, I read the other day or somewhere, I can't remember where, that our calling and our passion are not the same. So our passion can provide us our profession, our passion can provide us an income, but our calling, we're miserable when we're not walking in our calling. And I remember it struck me so much because what I do now as a profession was not something I was gearing for. It wasn't in my wheelhouse. Wasn't in my peripheral view in any way. And honestly, the online space was a little daunting. I'm a generation that the first computer was in middle school, and it was a very plain looking, and it took 20 minutes to warm up, the whole gamut of things. So when I thought about online, I thought, what in the world is this? However, as God would have it and the universe, is that I've been in business my entire adult life. I just didn't realize it could merge together. That being online and being a business owner, a teacher of business, was a space I would be in. But here's the thing, I've been a teacher, instructor my entire career. So it kind of went hand in hand, just all by accident, or what we would call a calling, right? It showed up, and then the universe conspired for me to have all the things I needed, the people I needed, the situations I needed to expand my view of what an online space business looks like. So that is my journey of how I became a business coach, is all by divine intervention.
I love the way you say that universe or God conspired, because it's really true. We have a path, right? And we're drawn to that path. And I think the more we're aware of it, the quicker that happens.
Oh, absolutely. And I think too, if you look at what your whole life has kind of brought you to now, there was no other way. There was nothing else that was going to show up for you anyhow, right?
Right.
I feel like the first 25 years of business was my school. It was my training ground. And then I went back to school when my oldest daughter started high school. She graduated high school, and I graduated college the same day. So I didn't go to my graduation, I went to hers.
Oh, I love that. That's sweet.
So I went back to get a business degree, just because I thought, well, there's got to be, is there any more to this business other than being in the field? And not so much. The field teaches you so much more.
I love that you say that, because, I'm a product of the public school system, and I got my BA in English from the University of Irvine. So, I believe in education, but there's nothing like being on the field. And that's what it is when you're an entrepreneur or solopreneur, it really is about learning. It really is about education and up-leveling yourself. But, it's like on the job training, really.
Yes. And entrepreneurship is, it's not for the faint of heart. Let's just put it that way.
Right. That's so true. And it's not theoretical like business school.
Oh gosh, not even close.
The rubber hits the ground type of thing. So let's jump in, because I love your topic, and I loved your talk that you gave to our Exceptional Connections community last week. And it wasn't enough time. So that was definitely a teaser. So been looking forward to being able to jump in a little more and just glean from your wisdom, because you talk about, just really how important it is for us to position ourselves as authorities. And then the pieces that you brought, for us to really consider are attracting, converting, and retaining more clients, which is something that we all need and want. So jump right in and help us to understand what it means to position yourself as an authority.
So I really, it's funny, Marcel, which I don't see her face here, wish she was here, but she really brought to light something I've always analogized marketing as. I don't even know if analogize is the word, ladies and gentlemen, but
it is now.
My analogy of marketing is always centered around dating. Now, I've been married for 27 years, so I can't even recall what dating was like, because I was like 19. However, I have a lot of single friends, and it kind of is very synonymous to each other. You don't just go into a first date with a stranger with everything, right? You don't show up at a date naked. You don't give all your history from the time you were 5 up to now. You don't give them your medical history. You don't share your blood type. It's like this process. It's this process of getting to know each other, getting to like each other, getting to trust each other enough to invite them to family gatherings. And marketing is very similar. And that's why I likened it to the three three pillars of how to attract, convert, and retain is really about being repetitive, consistent, and memorable. Those are, because when you're repetitive, you position yourself in such a way that people remember you. Kim and I have not had any deep conversations where we just sat eye to eye and it was like, but I see her so repetitiously that I gain trust in her in different spaces, right? I'm like, oh, okay, she's still consistently doing and saying the same thing she's been saying since the day I met her. So I could trust that. That level of repetition, see, that level of repetition is very positioning, right? And then but consistency and sounds like repetition, but it isn't, because consistency really has to do more with the context. Is the right message, the consistency. So I'm going to use Kim again as an example. I see her again, right? I was playing my little game on my phone. I see her, she pops up. And what's so fascinating is she's still saying the same things in a consistent manner because her context is around real estate. So she didn't show up in an ad through my game talking about her dislike for brown trees, right? Which could very well be a part of who Kim is. She may not like brown trees. I don't know. However, it's not in conflict of how I know her. It's consistent with the repetition I see her in. So the trust even deepens more so. So by that deepening, she becomes memorable to me. Because then how many lunches we've had together, Kim, right? We've been to Exceptional Connections for a while. We've been in all of these spaces. So when she suggests to me, wonderful, you're wearing white, you should not order spaghetti, I trust what she's saying to me. Because I could have very well been like, what do you know? I love the spaghetti and Spaghetti Factory. So that right there, all those steps in that format is how you position yourself in a place of business and in today's very digital world. With 8.7 billion people in existence, with 4 billion of them actively using social media, and everybody wants to stand out, right? It's like that meme that says, in a world of Kardashians, be Lucille Ball.
That's
right?
Great. Yes. I love that. And I love the way you make the analogy that when you have built trust, it carries over to other things. So subliminally, even that, like the spaghetti recommendation for you, you trust that she has your best interests at hand, and she does. And Kim has always been this is all about Kim Day. Kim has always been the queen of repetition and consistency. So she's a good role model for us to talk about.
And it takes, the other thing I want to say is, in the world of business, I think, so currently there's a statistic that says 86 million people have now embraced this world of entrepreneurship that used to be in corporate America in the US. 86 million from the COVID pandemic. They've moved out of their corporate jobs. They've become entrepreneurs. And I think what we have to consistently communicate also is any business, whether it's direct sales or selling rubber bands, it's a long game. It's never going to happen in a 48-hour period. All of these advertisings that I'm going to show you how to make 7 figures, that's a time commitment. It's marriage, right? It's like, so marketing is dating, business owning is marriage. You're in it for the long haul. So you better like what you do. You better love your product or service. And then you've got to know you got to stick to it. for longer periods. The opportunity to make 7 figures is there for the taking, but to get there is not going to happen in 3 months. It's going to take time.
Right. And I love the analogy also of like a marathon. So, you know, when you're running a sprint, it's short, you know, you have lots of energy and kind of a marketing campaign or something like that. And then also the marathon is, you know, it's a bigger commitment and you need to pace yourself, right?
Oh man, I ran one of those. The last 3 miles, I cried because I thought I was done. At that 20 mile, I'm like, I'm over this. I just want to go home.
But your commitment held you in there, right?
My commitment held me until I saw the finish line. And then I never want to do that ever, ever, ever.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I commend you. That's amazing. So I want to talk about, or I want you to mention, you shared a quote by Simon Sinek that I love. And, you know, you're all about how great leaders inspire action. So, you know, share with us a little bit about that quote and why that resonated with you.
So I'm going to read the quote. It's people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. In the early stages of my first business, we were very young. We were in our 20s. So you just kind of do what you see out in the world. You're just hustling into, and it was in the 90s. So we were door knocking, you know, advertising anywhere and everywhere we could be. And we didn't realize, because we were a young family ourselves, we thought the best way to create this environment where we're not paying an additional amount of money for daycare or help at home is let's just involve our whole family in it. And we built a family business. So all of our clients became family based. And what I recognize is people weren't buying into our business because of what we did. People bought into it because of who we were and what we believed in. So the sustainability lasted even longer because families stayed with us for 10, 15 years. As their kids grew, our kids grew up together. And I realized as I started studying businesses myself, because I'm very intrigued by how businesses are built, there's this incredible book called Good to Great. If anybody ever has an experience of it, and it's a study over a 30-year period of what takes companies from good to great. And it really lies in that space of people are buying into you, right? The leadership of that organization is the long haul. Why IBM has outlasted other companies that started when IBM was IBM, right? Why Johnson & Johnson is 100 years old. Why General Mills is 100 years old, right? I don't even want to mention car because cars are kind of not as fun and their history is not as great, but it's really people buy you all day. And it's even more imperative today because of the digital age. The digital age is so flashy, right? Social media, it's very flashy, everything, again, the world of Kardashians, right? And yet I'm playing my little game on my phone and pops up somebody I know, Kim, right? It really associates us to always know, oh, I know her. I trust her. Whenever I'm going to sell my house, guess who I'm going to, and guess what? I know 5 other realtors, but I see Kim all the time. So
that's confirmation bias, right? Also, because when
right.
we know that, okay, you know, even though I'm not planning on selling my house, if and when I do, you know, Kim is somebody I'm going to want to, you know, give my business to.
Right.
So talk to us about brand energy, because that was really intriguing to me. Attraction starts with brand energy.
Yeah. So again, I want to preface it from a place of this digital world. We're really walking into a transformed world on all fronts. And business happens to be one of the biggest arenas that the transformation is happening in. The way that business is being done 20 years ago is really unlikely to work today. The foundations of business will never change. That part we know for truth, right? You're always going to need finance, operations, sales and marketing, leadership. Those are the basis of all businesses. But how it functions is shifting because of this hybrid world we live in of digital and in-person. The trust factor has to go a little bit deeper because there's way too many shiny objects out there that distracts us. Branding is really an energy field, right? It's talks about Queen Elizabeth II, God bless her soul, is a $2 billion entity for the UK. Her face sells $2 billion a year annually. That's on her own, not attached to anything else, just on her own. That is a 1,000-year brand built. It's not shifted. It's always stayed the same. It's very trusted and tried and true, right? That's the energy in which we exist in as a business. So if somebody asked me, well, how would you describe Cyndi, who doesn't know Cyndi and wants to be a part of the community? How would you describe Cyndi? They don't want to know about exceptional connections. Based on how I know you and how you're showing up in your brand is how I'm going to relate it to them, right? I'm going to say, oh, Cyndi is reliable, trustworthy, honest, and thoughtful and caring and generous. Those are all the dynamic pieces you want in a networking. That's your brand. Now build the brand exceptional connections based on those understanding, and you'll have a brand that people recognize by energy 12 feet before you show up every single time. But people do it, business owners do it the other way. They look out and go, oh, I want to create a yellow brand, but on the inside, they're orange. Right? The way business is being done today, it has to start from you first and then out. For years, business was done from the outside in. Now it's got to be from the inside out. That's the biggest shift I see in
that
business.
Is so good, because you mentioned this. I've been thinking about it. It's not about the visuals, right? It's about the energy that brand exudes, and it needs to be consistent. Otherwise, people feel like, wait a minute, it's not congruent here.
Right. And when you think about why you married the particular person you went on a date with, it lies on those three. They're repetitively consistent, right? And so you figure out at some point, you're like, I think I can marry this person, which is like forever. I tell my kids all the time, forever is a long time. Just why don't you think about that when you're like,
forever is a long time. That's great. True.
Yes. So I think that if we built our brand, I often chat with Chuck about business because we both kind of have very same view about business. Is so much of how the world was being built through business, even through the Carnegie time and the Rockefeller time, everything was a doing. It's very external. Here's a product, here's a service you need. Well, in today's world, the resources is not 6 degrees separated from the consumer. It's literally 1 degree separated from the consumer, right? We don't hold, as business owners, we don't hold the same power we held 20 years ago. So it really has to be from the inside out. If you don't show up as you to your potential clients, the level of trust disseminates.
Wow, that's so true. And you have to keep that level of trust. It has to be consistent, like you said. It has to be repetitive. So you talked about like different passions that you have and how that gives people an opportunity to get to know you and learn more about you and have that confirmation bias, if you will.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. That's one of the things I teach in my courses is so often women, because I attract myself into my business, which is women 40 plus, right? I would even go 45 plus because 40, I think, is still a little young, but 45 plus. And the question is that I get most often is, social media. What do we do with social media? The social media. And so throughout my research of how the virtual digital world works, it's very similar. It's just a different version. So when we were growing up, how we knew, like my kids asked me, well, how did you know where you guys were hanging out? I was like, well, we walked around and looked for whose house had the most bikes in front of it, or you know what I mean? Or like we went to the watering hole that there was always a community pool that we all knew everybody could go to. It wasn't a membership based. Remember back then, ladies and gentlemen, where it was a true community pool. You could just walk in because you lived in the community. So it's very similar in that way of, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
How you met people? Maybe
Yes. So basically what I was saying is as you're building your brand on social media, the assumption is we just talk about our business, everything about business. But you don't really just trust someone based on one facet of their life, right? The reason I took Kim's advice for the spaghetti is because I also know she lives on a boat, because she shared that information with me, right? And I've seen her at a wedding. We were guests at a wedding together. And so we have these different parts of us, but we never show that. We just want to sell, business. So the way I have helped people build and myself build my brand on social media is share your 5 passions outside of business. What else do you like other than your business? Like, I love to read. I love history. I love hiking, right? I love my grandbabies. So in my social media, you'll see a sprinkle of multiple different things that's just not always attached to business. And I will put business in as often as I can, but I have an 80-20 principle. People trust 80% of your personal life and rarely engage in that 20% of your business life, because they care that you love your cat, because you become real to them. It's another level of trust, because you're a human being outside of this thing you're helping them evolve into or transform, right? So the likelihood of me, again, I know 5 realtors. 2 of them, one's my daughter, one is one of my really good friends. But when I think about how I think of real estate or whatever, right? Do you see it? I narrow it down to, I know 5, but I think I'm going to work with these 2 and see where we most fit, where we're most cohesive, because that's realistically how we always make decisions. We're always pro and conning in our own brain. Your audience is too. Every time they see a social media post, they're putting it in the con or pro section of their mind. Pro, she likes cats. Con, she has no dogs, right? Pro, she has grandkids. Con, she doesn't like them. Whatever. Because that's where we're gauging all the time. And social media just happens to be an incredibly powerful tool of sharing.
Yes. I love this conversation, because I love what you're saying about building meaningful relationships or connections. It really goes beyond business, and a wise business owner will take that to heart and let people into their life and on a personal level. And people think, I keep it separate. There's business and there's personal. But unlike, let's say the 50s, 60s, whatever, people want to know who you are. And that's why I think your philosophy of having passions and letting people in to those passions. And it's easier now than it was, because of social media. And so it is important to use that as a tool for us to leverage to let people, get to know us a little better.
When I was in business school, we did a case study on two of the most richest and famous people in our current world today, which was Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. And they did it based on this branding persona. And how they shared it, how we were able to study this case is Bill Gates is a bajillionaire in the tech world. Steve Jobs is a bajillionaire in the tech world. One created a software, one distributes software, right? However, based on knowing Steve Jobs' story, Steve Jobs is an incredible storyteller. We know that he's adopted. We know that he dropped out of college. We know how he got adopted, the story behind his adoption. We know how him and Wozniak started their business in the garage. We know all of these. We understand how Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley because of Steve Jobs's initial, because that's where he's from, right? We have this story format to such a degree that people line up 3 days, weeks in advance to purchase at an obnoxious price a product annually that he didn't even invent. He just put it together and marketed it really well. Now, Bill Gates, on the other hand, has, I don't know if you guys all know this, but he's been like fighting lawsuits forever. There was actually a big lawsuit against him and the government because he was monopolizing the tech industry, right? And no one really cared because we can't care about people who don't care enough to share with us who they are. Just recently, in the last 2 years, there was this Netflix special on Bill Gates. You finally understood who this guy was. You're like, oh my God, he actually liked his mom. He has a dad. He has a sister. They like going to camp. They camped every summer. He goes to a cabin once a year to read 10 books by himself. No radio, no television. It's a little late though, because some of us care enough because he's a bajillionaire, but some of us are like, whatever. We still buy Microsoft. But the consistency of deep love for Steve Jobs, and he's been dead for how many years now, is only growing because now he's memorialized because we know his story, know who he is. He shared so much of his life with us. He shared his commencement speech, which is one of the most watched commencement speech on YouTube ever for Stanford.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, it's only 10 minutes and it's brilliant. Like we had to watch it in business school, but it is one of the most watched commencement speeches on YouTube. I highly suggest you guys go watch it. But see the difference? Because one shared little bits and we don't know a lot about Steve Jobs, but we know enough to care about him. So we care about Apple. We care about Apple because we care about Steve Jobs because Steve Jobs cared enough about us. Bill Gates is kind of like, we don't have any other choice. Microsoft is it for now. It's kind of like, it's cool. He's in Washington. He's sort of this nerdy dude with glasses. Awesome. Steve Jobs literally wore the same turtleneck forever and no one cares. What we care about is who Steve Jobs is. That's how you position yourself as a brand, right?
My gosh, that's so funny. He had like 20 different black turtlenecks, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That's funny. Okay, so we're talking about positioning yourself as an authority. We've dived into the power of attraction and being repetitive and really how important that is. And so let's kind of, in the interest of time here, jump to your number 2 topic, which convert and being consistent, which the example you just gave is a brilliant segue to this because you're using both, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates as examples of, how important it is to let them, get to know you better so that you trust them better. So jump into the distinction of consistency versus repetition.
So as we all know, most of our products are there is someone in the world out of 8.7 billion people, you'll be able to sell your product or service at least 10 times. That much we know for sure. But to grow a business and to expand your income base, we've got to look at it from a different perspective, because conversion isn't just selling. It's actually like what you said in the beginning. It's all about relationship building. But it's not relationship building in terms of we got to go to coffee all the time, right? Do lunch. But it's relationships in the way of you have to be a human being to an audience that does not know anything about you other than your title. Your title is real estate agent. That's it. That's all they know. Think about how many people know or have a perception or have a definition in their own mind of what a realtor is, depending on if it was a good relationship or a good experience or a terrible experience or a bad experience, right? So everybody already has a preconceived notion of every title that we can come up with, even business coaching, even life coaching, even though that's very new. Everybody has a perceived idea. So consistency is really about committing to that context of what your brand is. So when somebody asks me what what is Cyndi like? Cyndi is reliable, she's generous, she's compassionate, she's like all these words. And then they show up to an Exceptional Connections and it's a hot mess. That's a conflict. There's a conflict in that, right? Because how I know you is from a personal space, but how you show up professionally does not go in line with what I just mentioned. That then breaks up the trust factor, because you're not consistent in the context of what you're showing up as. So you don't have to show every lunch that you have, every vacation you're on, there's probably people who love cats, probably has 1,000 pictures of cats on their phone. We don't need to see all of it. We just need to know how it relates to you as a human being that's relatable to an audience that's getting to know you. And then in that consistency, the trust is built. So then when they call, let's say I call Linda and say, Linda, you work with people who are downsizing, I'm downsizing, but she's kind of like, well, I do, but the majority of my people are actually new buyers, blah, 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 blah. Or let's just say she says, actually, I only work with international people. There's a conflict now for what she's sharing. No one ever buys anything from confusion, ever. Conflict starts confusion in the mind. So there's this real fine line of being honest and vulnerable with the context of consistency, because those three things combined converts nonstop. It is an ongoing conversion wheel when people trust you, know, like you, trust you, know you, like you, right? Like, no, trust you, no, like, trust you. It doesn't matter which order it goes in, but when you're consistently showing up as that person, as a solution to a problem, your conversion is so much easier. Now it's all about marketing. Then marketing is, because marketing is a whole different beast. That's right. That's like, so if you put branding and marketing together, conversion just becomes natural.
And I love the way you talk about, and you haven't mentioned it yet, but in your talk, you talked about dating your future clients. And what I just heard you say is you don't want to overshare, or, you know what I mean? You want to kind of flirt, right? It's a little bit of flirting.
Yes. A little bit of hair tossing, a little bit, right? Get to the first drink.
Right. And be consistent in the midst of that with your personal life and your business life, because again, you know, you alluded, and I always hear this, a confused mind says no. So if we confuse people, there's not, I guess the word that comes to mind most is congruent. If things are incongruent, then people question it. But if you're congruent, who you are in your personal life, who you are in your professional life, who you say you are, what you say you're going to do, then it just reinforces, right?
And you know what's so interesting that you use the word congruency is because on a physiological level, how our human brain works sees patterns, and patterns is what evokes trust. So congruency is already a perception of pattern, right? Like,
Which
so,
is repetition. Repetition's a pattern,
right,
right? Consistency is a
exactly.
pattern.
And trust, therefore, is based on a pattern of that congruency and repetitiousness and consistency. So when people tell me, well, wonderful, I really want to do this, but I'm really scared to post it out in the world. The fear is, majority of the women I work with, their fear is it'll be rejected, it will be denied, right? Or it'll be neglected as a business owner, which then we take personally. But the reality is, when you build something with a plan that is consistently per quarter, so you have 3 months that you're consistently showing up in that way, people really don't, you're not going to be rejected. The only reason people say no is for two reasons: they don't understand the value that you offer, right? Or it's really not the time. It's not, nothing ever is that personal that people say no, they can't attend your thing, or no, they don't want to use you as this, or no, that's not. People have again, a perceived idea of what, rejection is. But in the world of business, people are saying no just for two reasons: they just don't see the value, or it's really not the time. It's never really about money. I'll put that out there, because we live in a first world country. Money is rarely the issue. They use money as an excuse because they don't see the value. Because I see way too many people carrying around Louis Vuitton bags and can't afford rent. So it's not about money, right? It's
Yes.
really value. It's value based. People say no because you're not putting out enough value for them to see it's worth that money.
Right. Oh my gosh, you're unpacking so many wonderful topics here. We're short on time, but I want to make sure we talk about, because you mentioned like the Zig Ziglar quote, and I love this quote. If people like you, they'll listen to you, right? But if they trust you, they'll do business with you. I love that quote that you shared with us, because that's what it's all about. It's like you say, it's timing is important. And you have to value that, because when somebody says no, it doesn't mean no forever. It means no for
Right.
now. And I always take them at their word and just continue to, our job is, I believe, is to educate people. It's their job to take advantage of what we have to offer.
Lovingly pursue.
Yes, exactly. And so, but trust is a critical factor to that. And so tell us more about trust before we move on to the third piece.
Well, trust is, in business, in any facet of human life, reputation is huge. So in the 90s, it wasn't we talked a lot about reputation versus trust, because trust, we just assumed reputation meant trust, right? In today's world, trust is the most spoken word. Just like in the 90s, it wasn't brand that we talked about. We talked a lot about positioning, right? So it's all the same, it just has a new name to it. So trust is reputation. So reputation is based on the brand. See how it all fits together? It's like a whole outfit. It's like the shoes, the socks, the earrings, the necklace, the hat, the jacket, the undergarments. It's all coming together, because you don't show up to the date half clothed. You got to go full on, right? You got to wear shoes. So trust is kind of the final product, because that's the reputation. That's the overall reputation. That's why there's enough business for all realtors, because each realtor is an expert in one arena. So if whatever Linda does is not the same as Kim, they can actually think about it as a consumer. If Linda says to me, I don't really work on that, but I have a friend that does, let me send you over to Kim. Now my trust factor for Linda just grew 100%, because she's not in it for just the money. She's in it as how she says, I'm a relationship person. So if we say we're about confidence, and then we're not showing up in that confidence, it's again another conflict, right? So reputation and trust all kind of rolls into the same thing. If I say my favorite color is red, but I never wear red, I only wear pink, just because it's a shade of red doesn't mean it's red, right? Again, conflict, confusion, no one, and you can't, trust is corroded by conflict. So people can't keep trusting you if you keep not being that thing. One of the first things I always say to people when they want to be friends, like, oh my gosh, we're going to be friends. I'm like, okay, so if you want somebody that's on time all the time, we might have to revisit, because I don't know what it is about me, but I'm perpetually late. And it's usually a good 5-10 minutes. But if that's a pet peeve, you might not want me to be on your friend roster.
Oh
I'm
my
an
God.
acquaintance roster, right?
But see, it's trust is fulfilling on your promise. So even
Mm-hmm.
in this instance where you're saying, I'm a perpetual, that means time and I don't always get along.
Right. But at least and that's the thing I think as
But
business
you're being
owners,
honest, right? You're being
yes, because
upfront,
we're
you're
held
being
to a
honest.
higher standard as business owners. Because there's
Right.
not a business owner that's not a leader. We're all leaders. It's how you shape that leadership that is really what you're putting out there as a brand. So I think that's why it's not for the faint of heart. Business is not for the faint of heart, because there's so many moving parts. Has anybody ever gone to a Chinese circus? Have you ever seen? Okay, so at a Chinese circus, one of the things that they do is this thing called spinning plates. So they'll spin one plate, then they'll spin another, and up to about 20 to 50 plates on the stage, one person. And I don't know how this person remembers which was the first plate, which was second, but it is fascinating to watch on that level. When you're watching 50 plates spin and not a single one falls for a good 30 minutes, you're like, oh my God, this visually, you can see your business. You're like, that's business.
Yeah,
Is
keeping
the
all those
multiple.
plates spinning is not easy. That's not for the faint of heart, like you said, being a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
And because nobody wants to see their things crash, right? You want
Right.
to keep things
Right.
moving and humming. And I mean, it happens to the best of us. But so if we keep, we want to retain our customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see, number one is attract our customers. We want to
Mm-hmm.
keep repetition. And then
Mm-hmm.
number two, the next goal is to convert people. And the way to do that is be consistent, build
Mm-hmm.
trust, build value. So bring us home with how we can retain our clients and be
Yes.
memorable.
So again, I like to bring up the 90s because I learned so much of my business verbiage. Is we used to call it closing the back door, right? That's what retention is how do you close the back door? Because what you recognize is it takes a lot more effort to keep filling the pipeline when there isn't already an existing database that's funding your life, right? Like that is bringing in the cash flow. So in your existing clientele is the retention of them, because that's sort of what I would consider your cash flow while you're fulfilling this other need of filling the pipeline of new people. So that's the way that sort of that machine works. But I think people forget in marketing is what you see a lot being marketed is market to fresh people, but no one ever talks about nurturing what you already have, right? Nurturing your base already is extremely important, and nurturing them, a part of that is being memorable, that you're always top of mind. And so much of that retention comes from your customer service. Memorability is how accessible you are. Like when people say, oh my gosh, I've got this new program, but then never add a link, never tell you, right? Or you're having to hunt down the Zoom link. Like those are ways of taking care of our people. And how I learned the biggest lesson I ever learned, and how to really create a robust version of caring for my existing clientele, is what is my competition doing? Because when people leave you, they don't necessarily leave you because they're done with that service. most people will leave you because there's some sort of disgruntled something conflict, and they'll go to your competition, right? Who wants to lose their people to a competition? If it's true that one person knows 250 people and have influence of 50% of those 250 people, losing one person is a lot. That's a lot of cash flow. Take a stack of money and burn it, right? So it's really important that we have all our operations, our automations, how we care for them, how when you're reaching out, like with Cyndi, when you reached out this morning and sent me the Zoom link, even though I already have the Zoom link, but sending it again, that's a level of retention and care that I know, yeah, every time you ask me, even if I don't feel like ever speaking again, I'll say yes. Because I trust that when I come to your organization, you're going to care for me, you're reliable, you're generous, you're all of the things, right? And retention is all about being cared for. There was actually a study done about doctors, surgeons, their hospitals, big hospitals, and I'll end with this, and I promise, okay, because there's a little bit of time, is insurance companies were like, why is there so much lawsuits against these particular doctors? So these 3 big hospitals in the East Coast were like, what in the world is happening? And so they did a study of why these particular doctors kept getting lawsuits after lawsuits after lawsuits, even though they were the well-trained, they had PhDs, they're actually at the top of their game in that particular category of whatever they're doctoring, right? Whether they're surgeons or anesthesiologists. And you know what they found? Is when doctors don't look at their patients in the eye when they're giving them their diagnosis, the likelihood of them getting a lawsuit is like 70% because they don't feel cared for. Who knew it was human relation that drove lawsuits versus expertise? Retention is all about human relation. So it has to come from top to bottom. Your brand is the beginning stage. They have to like you then. They get to know you through your marketing, and you'll close them because your reputation of trust is consistently happening over. That's where a lot of testimonies come in. Testimonials are how you stay memorable, how people see that their third-party validation, right? All of that. So if insurance companies can save more money by these billion-dollar lawsuits by training their doctors to be more human with their clients, that was it. I mean, they were shocked. They were shocked that was the one common factor between all these doctors that were getting lawsuits. They just didn't look at their clients in the eye when they were delivering their diagnosis. Yeah.
That's crazy. I've never heard that story, but I have heard that people, a lot of people leave businesses not because the product or service didn't deliver, but they felt like they were being taken for granted. So it's kind of that same strand of they don't feel like they care. I mean, you have people that look you in the eye, they're showing that they care, and there's a trust factor there. So there's some kind of a break in that. Well, we can go on and on. This is a very intriguing conversation, and you're a wealth of information. But I'm going to allow time for those who are joining us today. If they have any questions, we've got Wonderful on the line here. So feel free to unmute yourself. And if you have anything you want to share, this is the opportunity. So just unmute yourself, and we know that you're in the queue to ask a question or share something that perhaps Wonderful shared that resonated with you.
Yes, share away, ladies and gents. What you got for me?
Well, I really enjoyed, just the time, what you were saying about the repetition and all of those things. My marketing managers would love you because they're the ones behind all the stuff. And it's a lot of work to do to and to build that database and then maintain the database, and like, oh, these people have moved and I've got returned addresses and mail, and I got to track them down. I'm doing football schedules as we talk, and I'm coming across and I'm like, I'm looking, just glancing and like, I know this person has moved and the address isn't on there because when she moved, we installed something in her bathroom through the construction company. I'm like, okay, I missed that. I updated something, but I didn't update the other thing, right? So there's so many moving parts to doing that. And
right,
it's important to have other people who are experts managing this stuff.
100%, Kim. I'm a firm believer in that. Like, yes, you can't do it all.
You can't do it all. And I swear, I'm like, the football schedules and the calendars are the only thing that I do myself because my marketing company doesn't do them. I'm like, would you please start doing these? It's so much work. But you just have to have the experts to do it. And I love the stuff that you talked about the social media and the 80-20. And you said that at your presentation. And I immediately, because I was like, oh, I'm probably 80% business. But when I look back, it wasn't the case. But since I got the cancer, I just have been, I realized in the last year, I've been much more reclusive and not sharing things. And so I've been making more of an effort, like, I really do need to share more and do just more personal stuff and just pop up something like, I'm at the marina, the music at the marina. So I did a little video live.
I watched that. And you'll also notice, ladies and gentlemen, that when you post personal stuff, the engagement is really high. And you're like, so people are watching? How come they're not responding when I put business stuff? That's why. It's because, they love what you're doing on a regular basis. And but when they need that business thing, trust me, you'll be the first one they think about.
Put some of that business stuff in there. I remember before I did anything with Facebook, I was probably like 8 years ago, this Facebook specialist reviewed my page and she's like, you have nothing on your page. I'm like, yeah, I know. She's like, well, that tells me you're not in business. And I'm like, oh, right. So I didn't hire her because she was like $3,000 a month. And, I didn't have that kind of money, but I started posting stuff on the business page. So I look like I'm in business, right? That's part of, you got to look like you're in business. So you have to have some business stuff, but it's really,
exactly. That's why it's a fine balance. And I found 80-20 has been the most useful in terms of engagement and conversion rates, because social media, actually the conversion rate's really low unless you're on there all the time. Like if you guys see a bunch of Grant Cardone stuff, can you imagine? That's $100,000 worth of advertising he's putting out just so you could see him more than once. I don't even want to, even if I had 100,000, I wouldn't want to do that. That's too much.
If you have the right people helping you, my online marketing budget is like, I think it's $120 a month, but my ads are only being shown to people who know me. Right. So it's not expensive, but you have to have the right people helping you. I couldn't.
Yeah. So that's where I have to be really clear about what I do. My actual business is about formulating your plan and having the right message for the right people. I don't do anything. I don't help you with content. I don't send you to that's not what I do. I do the very foundational piece for long-term business, which is you got to have a plan and you got to have a strategy. And then you find all the other people to do that. Like the marketing managers, right? I do not do that at all. I don't do any of the branding. I just show you how to strategically put a brand together and everything else. So for me, my new program actually that I'm offering in that masterclass is a collaborative format where I'm now introducing all of the people I've used in order for this to exist, because it's really tough to just help people plan out their business for success and then they're on their own finding all the resources. When I do have resources I use personally, not that you have to use mine, but at least it starts you off somewhere, right?
That's a great segue. And we can have anybody that has a question still just unmute yourself and we'll take you next. But since you mentioned your masterclass, so that's the Lead Boldly. Tell us a little bit more about that. And I'll add in the notes below, I'll add information on how people can find out more.
So when I started my online business, it was really transactional. Like everything I've taught is about structure and systems and strategies, putting your business in a chronological manner that makes the most sense for growth and increase. But what I learned in these 4 years, I'm celebrating my 5 years, by the way, in December,
Congratulations.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited, is that a really big missing piece is how decision making and communication in moving that forward. Like most women I've worked with have been in business long enough to be like, ooh, I got here, but how do I get there? Like, how do I move that direction? So Lead Boldly is really under this entire scope of understanding when we got here's an example of why it's important to me. When we were 30 years old and got the IRS bill that we made $1 million that year, I did not know how to deal with it. I did not know how to deal with that. I did, because you just, right? You're working. And then when you get that confirmation from the government that you have now increased your business from, I borrowed $20,000 from my uncle to be now considered $1 million business on paper, we didn't know how to handle any of our next decisions for that. We didn't know how to handle the finances moving forward, accounting moving forward. We're 30 years old. We didn't know any better, right? And all of the things that come with building and growing a business to the next level is very daunting. So we didn't know what to do with that, even though all business owners you ever talk to talk about wanting success. Success. I want success. I'm going to have success. But success is a lot harder to deal with than not being successful, because there's a lot more emotion and decision-making and communication that goes with success than building.
Because you have to sustain it, right?
Yeah, sustainability of increase is a different ball game. Yeah. So Leading Boldly is a whole program that helps us through that. What does that look to really say at the end of a 12-month period, I want to double my income to add another zero. At the rate you're going right now with what you're making, it has to change. How do you know how to get there? How do you know what that change looks like? How do you know what goes into all that change? So Leading Boldly is what that's about. So the masterclass I'm offering is to help people understand, is this really what they want? Right? Is it a pipe dream or is it reality?
Right. Okay.
Because there's a difference.
Just to tie a bow around that. So that is every Thursday from 4 to 5 Pacific Standard Time. It's a free masterclass, and yes. I'll have the enrollment link in the website down below. And I'll actually add the enrollment link right now in the chat box so that you're
I wanted to start this business boot camp to help that level, because next level is completely different from the grind, right? Grind and hustle is, we all can make it through that. We made it this far, but that next level phase, that one that Kim's talking about, like, how did you know when to hire that marketing company? How did you, right? And how do you relay the messages to that? Just because you hire a virtual assistant or somebody that does your social media marketing doesn't mean you actually know what you want them to do. They don't know because they're not in your business. It's not their job to hunt down that information. All that information should already be in your hands to hand over to someone else. It's not they do not get paid enough to do all that other work for you, unless you hire a company that's like Heather and Charlie's, where they build your brand for you. They create the whole thing. And whatever they're asking for is worth it. Trust me, because doing that on your own is a pain in the ass, right?
And so you can do it 2 ways. Yeah, you just brought up, especially Heather and Charlie are a great example. Repetition, consistency builds trust, right? And that's what they support you in doing. So if there's anybody out there that says, I don't know how to do that, well, then they need to hire experts like Heather and Charlie and Free Time Solutions to accomplish that. There's a plug.
Yes. Because I think a lot of, out of country VAs get a bad rap because people say, well, they didn't do what I wanted. No, you expected them to create something that's not in their wheelhouse. They have a particular job, and their job isn't to build your brand. You have to know what color, you have to know all that. That's where Heather and Charlie are more proficient in. They start you from ground level. If you don't know what your brand is, they walk you through all of that process. But a VA from another country, that's not what they do. They don't even put that on there, right? But the assumption is, well, they're virtual assistants. They should do everything. You're the business owner. You should already know that.
I have a VA in the Philippines, and she's been with me, I don't know, 6-7 years. And when I first started with her, we met every morning, and I said, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is what I'm going to do. And then we're going to meet again tomorrow morning, and we're in touch during the day. And then I developed these like massive lists for listing process. This is the buyer's process. And it's just this huge checklist in a spreadsheet. And she's got marked what she does. She tells me and she reminds me what I'm responsible for. And so over time, I've developed that I can trust and I know what she's doing.
Right.
When we have her try, like her husband, we had to make a website for the construction company, and it looked pretty good, but we weren't getting very good advertising on it. I just figured out that it's because it wasn't put together right? Because it's just like, it was beyond, they were really reaching to try to do it, and we wanted to get them some money and whatever. But it's really true. You got to stick with what they know. And when I've tried to, when she does my transactions, she's wonderful, right? And if I try to get her to do stuff that's not that, I don't get good results. But it's,
because I get that all the time. People will say, well, I've had a virtual assistant, and it right there immediately I know you weren't prepared. As a business owner, that was on you, but you put it on them, and that's not fair. Then you give everybody a bad rap about that, or like, I hired a social media company and they didn't do anything. I'm pretty sure that's you, not them. They know what they're good at. You didn't come prepared. That's what I bring to the table is I want all entrepreneurs to be extremely prepared for business growth and then go find your resources. Without a plan, you're just in the air going, I think I want it to look like that. I think I want it to look, that's a lot of wasted money, energy, and time.
Well, thank you so much. Wonderful. So many, this is such a rich conversation, and thank you for everybody that contributed and joined us today. We meet this first and third Wednesdays, noon to 1. Join us in the future for other wonderful conversations to connect. And so I'm just going to, in closing, just remind you to make every connection an exceptional connection. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.